So let's take a deep breath into this awareness that sometimes life is going in one direction and something happens that takes us in another direction. And it may be that we seek and desire and hope for understanding. And so I give you this idea to think about. That it is a holy and sacred thing to seek understanding and to be open to understanding. So I invite us all to take a few deep, conscious, healing breaths. Let our minds rest, let our hearts open. Prepare our consciousness to be available to awakening, to deepening, to this incredible awareness of oneness, and that there's so much more we are capable of in our species to help to create that peace and that transformed consciousness. So I invite you to continue to easily breathe. Allow your body to be renewed and restored by that deep breath. And please listen to these words from Proverbs. If you indeed cry out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasures, then you will understand. You will have reverence for the knowledge of God. If you indeed cry out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek it like silver, as if it is a hidden treasure, then you will understand the knowledge of God, the knowledge of this consciousness of oneness. So I invite you now to hold in your heart something for which you are seeking understanding. Just hold that in your heart, something about which you are hoping for understanding. And I invite each one of us to consider these words of Proverbs. And this idea that we even consider there's more understanding, more to be known, more to be wise, and more to hold in our hearts with clarity. There's more. We think we understand a situation, and yet there's more for us to understand. So let's step into that idea that we have the capacity to step into understanding and clarity and wisdom and knowledge, and we seek that as if it's hidden treasure within us. Today we hold in prayer and set an intention that which we've been confused about or uncertain about, that today we deepen into a little more clarity, a little more understanding, a little more insight. Because this helps to create peace in our hearts and in our minds. So as we take a few moments of silence, I invite each one of us to give ourselves over to this idea. There's more to be known, there's more to be seen, there's more to be understood about all the world events and the events of our lives. Take a moment of silence. seek understanding like a hidden treasure. We know it's there. And again, we set intention to see more clearly, to sense more fully, and to understand more deeply. For all that we hold in our heart, we surround each person, each event, each circumstance with our healing love, our healing prayers. From our sense of wholeness, we see wholeness for one another and for our world, and we say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is, and so we let it be. Namaste. So none of you left during meditation. Very good. A few more arrived. That's good. Okay, we're talking today about the power of understanding. It's one of the 12 powers that Charles Fillmore talked about. How many of you feel that there's yet a lot to be understood about our species and the world and what's happening? And so I love this idea that Linda Martella-Whitsitt points out in her book, Divine Audacity, that understanding is to break it down, it's realization, it's comprehension, it's insight. And I, for one, am constantly these days reaching for insight and comprehension about what's going on in our world. So the 12 powers are listed here, and Fillmore, he didn't think that these were just nice ideas, something that we could work for and strive for. He felt that these innate capacities stretched back all the way through infinity to the very beginning of the creative presence that put it all together, and that it's encoded within us, these capacities. In other words, we don't have to go to a seminar and figure out how to make these capacities work. And these are already within us. It's already done. Everybody say, it's already done. It's already done. So the capacities that you see listed here, they're powerful ideas, and today we're talking about the one called understanding. So a few weeks ago when I talked about faith, you remember Fillmore said faith is the foundation of all the other powers. The perceiving power of the mind. And Jesus went so far to say your faith does what? Makes us whole. So faith is a pretty powerful idea that we want to deepen. And faith is the foundation. That's what we stand on. And that takes us to understanding. So think about that. What are you standing on today? I'm talking about energetically, metaphorically. What is it you're standing on today? Faith, love. What's your tableland that you're standing on? What's that place that you're standing on? There's an old song that went something, Lord, lift me up and let me stand. You know it?
Oh, I was going to say on this song.
Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on heaven's tableland, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. So there's this idea that we can be in confusion, we can be in fear, we can be in upset. There's a higher place we can go. You might look at it as deeper. You know, how do you see the oneness connection? Is it higher? Is it deeper? Is it within? So this idea of understanding, this is what we're standing on. So what are some examples of when you deepened into a place in your life of greater understanding? What are some examples of that? What? Optimism. You had an experience that you understand optimism. You understand you're divinely guided. You had an experience that helped you know that you're divinely guided. What else? Shall I give some examples? Oh, yes, ma'am.
Well, I was riding on that
understand, I feel free and optimistic and happy.
Okay, is that where we're going with that? Free and
That's
optimistic?
kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So let's talk about some examples. You may have had these in your life personally, or you may have noticed that our species is gaining this understanding. When's the first time you saw this idea? Here.
On the back of Cha-Cha's bumper.
So about 15 years ago, maybe longer now, we began to see this in different places. And I remember when we started seeing this, I noticed that some of us were a little hesitant at first to stand for this idea. But this is an idea whose time has come, and it's an idea that's catching hold. But it wasn't always that way. We have to move into a level of understanding, a level of awakening, a certain amount of awakening to realize whatever culture or religion we may have been raised in isn't the only one. There's others. And it makes up the human family, the human species. You know, I heard a great line in the book, in the film, Pi. Did you see that, P.I.?
Yeah.
And the man from India, he says, we've all been introduced to God by someone. You know, we might have been introduced to God by Buddha. We might have been introduced to God by Jesus. We might have been introduced to God by our grandmothers, our grandfathers. We're all introduced to the one presence, the presence known by many names, by something, by someone. This idea of coexist, this image was not always alive in the world the way it is now. So we've reached another level of understanding. You see how that works? We should applaud our human species for being able to even have such a symbol. So this idea of oneness, it wasn't always an idea fully understood by us, and we're still deepening into what it means. It wasn't always, you know, we have this symbol over here on this table, the same symbol that's up on the screen right now. This idea that we're all connected, nature, animals, people, the trees, the mountains, it's all connected. We cannot extract out one thing and expect the world to be as healthy. It's an idea that's always been available to humankind, but it's something that we all haven't been catching hold of until the last few decades. Am I right? This idea of going within and sensing our connection with the all. The idea of going into the inner to tap wisdom and to tap peace and to tap healing. That is not a new idea, but it's an idea that more and more of us are catching hold of, that the kingdom, that this going into the inner, going into the silence, going into that place of wisdom within us, that this is what we're called to do. It's not a new idea, but it's an idea that a lot of us are catching hold of in new ways. Am I right?
Yes.
Perhaps the butterfly is proof that you can go through a great deal of darkness yet become something beautiful. So can you remember the moment, the first time you had this insight, this understanding, that out of the hardest life experiences can come our greatest growth and awakening? That was an idea that we didn't always have. Somehow we deepened into understanding. Somehow we've been able to do that so that now in the midst of something upsetting, we can actually say, I wonder what the higher picture is here. I wonder what's really going on. I wonder what's going to take me to my understanding and my transformation. What else is going on here? Another way to say that, what's God up to in this? What's God up to in this? We can ask that about the world. What's spirit, one presence, up to in this?
Can I just say that when you do that, I had an experience last week where I had to do that. It was something that happened, And I had to reach out and grab onto that, okay, what's the bigger picture here? And it's taken me all week to really come from a little bit of anger to, I go for forgiveness, but at least I'm reaching for that,
Right.
That's the whole thing.
That is everything. So let's think about that. To deepen into understanding, we need a desire to understand. We talked about this at length in the Sunday morning circle. In order to understand, we have to have a desire to understand. Have you ever been so locked in to an idea, to a belief, to an attitude, that you were just locked into and you couldn't see anything else outside of that picture? Have you ever done that? Everybody say yes. Okay, so because we could be in the human race. Okay, so, and then something happens that puts a chink of light into that idea, that picture, and we have to widen the frame because suddenly we realize there's more to be seen, there's more to be understood. Understanding is something we have to desire to have. So I may have a locked-in belief system. It might be killing me, this belief system. Humankind has some belief systems that are killing, and we want life-affirming ideas. But the understanding, it's something that we have to want so much that we seek for it like a hidden treasure. And we have to make an assumption that understanding is possible. If we don't do that, then we push away the possibility for peace and reconciliation and forgiveness. If we think that some event or some person is now outside of our range of oneness, we've talked ourselves into a lie. Nobody can be outside the range of oneness. We have to deepen into understanding like a hidden treasure. What's to be understood in our world right now? Nobody has the right to tell you or me that our perspective doesn't make a difference, that it's not powerful, that our perspectives can help transform and heal if we allow them to. That's why understanding is so important. I have a picture of a purple tree up on the screen. It's a jacaranda tree. And I didn't see one until I got out to California in 1993 out in Santa Barbara. I didn't know there were purple trees. And years ago when I worked in a kindergarten, a little boy there, he used his crayons to create a purple tree. And I remember watching and hearing the kindergarten teacher. I was a teacher in training. She actually said to this little boy, can you believe it? She said, there are no purple trees. Now this is in the way back, the olden days. This was this was in the early 70s. It was when the early 70s when people still said outlandish things like that. Okay, so take a deep breath, because somebody in your life told you that something wasn't possible or that you couldn't do something a certain way, right? Am I right? So she actually said to him, there are no purple trees. And I came behind her and said, you can have a purple tree if you want. For all I know, he ended up working for Walt Disney World and creating lots of purple trees. But years later when I got to Santa Barbara, and I saw that purple tree, I wondered, where did that little boy end up? Yeah, it is, Santa Barbara. What happens to the little boys and the little girls who are told there's no purple trees? So this idea of understanding, deepening into this understanding that there's more to be seen, there's more to be understood, and I need to seek after that understanding like a treasure because it takes me into greater oneness. It takes me into greater oneness. So I just finished a book last night called, I don't know why I have trouble with this title, The World Between Me and You. Is that it? The Boundary Between Me and You. Ta-Nehisi Coates. Who knows this book? He's very popular in New York Times and The boundary between you and me, and I made myself read the book because I wanted to understand something that I've been coming into greater understanding about. And he wrote this book to his 15-year-old son, and he wrote the book about what it's like to have black skin in America. And he wrote this to his 15-year-old son, preparing him for a world that would see the pigmentation of his skin and would make interpretations about him and his life that may or may not be true. My understanding's deepening about the world I was raised in and about what's true and what's not true. And it made me, I had a memory reading this book last night. I finished it about 12:30 last night. I had a memory of when I used to volunteer at Hope Haven Children's Hospital in Jacksonville, Florida. It didn't occur to me till last night. This is crazy to think about. There were no black children in that hospital. They had another hospital. But I didn't remember that till last night. See, understanding just keeps... understanding takes us to the depths if we're open to it. And so in this children's hospital, I was aware that throughout the day there were workers, cafeteria workers, cleaning people, and throughout the day I would go down into the cafeteria or I would go into different children's rooms to visit them as a volunteer, and these African American workers would be singing, would be telling stories, they'd be visiting with the children. They had something. I wanted to understand what it was. And so I started going down into the basement at 7 a.m. every morning to visit with them in the laundry room. And with dryers whirling and washing machines going, they were having prayer meetings and prayer that opens the windows of heaven. We saw so many verdicts at that hospital transformed, so many children who weren't supposed to leave that hospital leaving healthy. And I went into the chief of staff one day and I said, do you know what they're doing every morning in the basement? He said, oh yeah, I know. Tell them don't quit. They would start the day filling the hospital with prayers of healing for the children and their families. And then throughout the day when they were mopping and changing flowers in the vases and taking food in, they would be singing and praying and holding this energy. And they were doing all of that in a hospital that did not welcome their own children. And of all the years that I've been learning, allegedly learning and deepening in my spiritual practices, it wasn't until last night that it dawned on me. Where were the children? Their own children. And yet they still cared enough for the children in that hospital to pray and sing healing energy into the very walls of that building. Understanding takes us places that we don't even know we want to go. As we seek the hidden treasure of understanding, we deepen into oneness, we deepen into transformative consciousness, we deepen into healing, and we let go of old beliefs that keep us from knowing our oneness with one another. Rise up to new dimensions. I am personally in awe of how much I don't know. I'm personally in awe at the little chink of light that I've been riding on the wave of that little chink of light for my whole life, and now to get to this place and realize that little chink of light is evidence of such a bigger light. But I have to be willing to see truthfully what goes on in my own thinking, in the thinking of my culture, my religion, my species. I have to look feel empathy for all others who've had experiences that I may not have had, but experiences just the same that have affected my species, wounded my species, and healed my species. Understanding. So let's take a deep breath. It is an awakened consciousness that's even able to say, I know there's more to be understood, and I open my heart and mind to that, to deepening into more understanding. It takes an awakened consciousness to be willing to knock out the walls of old beliefs and old cultural ideas to deepen into what's more true. I am so grateful to be in a community of people where we can ask the hard questions and deepen into greater levels of truth. I'm so grateful to seek for more understanding. I am in awe of our capacities for oneness. In this moment, I ask that we all deepen into our hearts and give thanks for our teachers in all the many forms that they come in. All those people who help us to wake up, to stay awake, to see clearly, more clearly, to understand more fully. I give thanks for all of our teachers and the precious community of people in the basement of Hope Haven Children's Hospital are clearly still teaching me. So we bless all of our teachers wherever they are in all the forms that they've come in. And we give thanks for the very humbling awareness that we too are someone else's teachers. We give thanks in the name and in the light of the living presence of peace. We give thanks for healing and renewal on all levels. And today, we give thanks for understanding. Namaste.